All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, as always, I like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha HaKodash, double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Salutations to you, sincere and hopeful elect Akim, pushing the word of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai in spirit and in truth. Coming back at you with another lesson. All right, my Rabbi, that's to say 144,000 in the Lashawan Kodash, which is what we are striving to be a part of, taking part in this ministry. I want to get into the restoration, okay, the restoration of Israel. What this world has misconstrued in the scriptures is that, salvation is for everyone, which is erroneous. How can salvation be for everyone when the Israelites themselves, all 12 tribes, haven't even been restored? Okay? How can you provide or open up salvation to every nation on planet Earth? However, the nation that had the covenant, made a covenant with Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, has not even been restored. All right? So I would just want to edify on that. So I'm going to start here in Amos 9 and 11. As you see, the restoration of Israel. I'm going to read it in both KJV and NLT. So in the KJV, it says, Amos 9 and 11. In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof, and will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old. NLT. In that day I will restore the fallen house of David. I will repair the damaged walls. From the ruins I will rebuild it and restore it its former glory. Okay, so let me look up this word breaches, because you got to remember that after King Solomon, you had the nation that was rent in two, all right, divided. Okay, you had Judah, Benjamin, and Levi that followed after Rehoboam, and then you had the northern kingdom, all right, the so-called native Seminole and Latino tribes, that Spanish-speaking tribes that followed after, majority of them followed after Jeroboam. So here in the Hebrew, H6556 is parats. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, parats or parat, parat. It says a breach, gap, bursting forth, outburst, breach, broken wall, outburst, figuratively of the Most High's wrath. All right, so with the Most High's wrath, he divided Israel, all right, which is part of the curses. The Most High being upset with us not following his law, statutes, and commandments. What he did was he divided the Israelites, man. All right, now that's a curse to experience being separated from your family, all right, from your siblings, as it says, part of the curses in Deuteronomy 28. That the children will be taken from the parents, and their eyes shall fail with longing all the day for them. Roughly paraphrasing. So imagine having 11 brothers, and 9 of them get taken into captivity, and then from that captivity, all right, a lot of them go to a whole nother part of the world, and then even another layer to that being that it's just a enmity and a hatred between the brothers. Okay, so that's the curse. But the Heavenly Father through Yahweh Shai is restoring the unity that we as Israelites once had. All right. Now, with that restoration, that does not include any of the actual heathen, any of the actual nations, the heathen nations. All right. That does not include them in that restoration. Okay. Now, next, I want to grab John 11. Let me see where I'm reading. John 10, 11 through 16. All right, so this is Yahweh Shai speaking. And it reads, John 10 and 11. It says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. Okay. So the sheep being the nation of Israel. But he that is an hireling and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming and leaveth the sheep and fleeth, and the wolf catcheth them and scattereth them and scattereth the sheep. So you've had individuals who came amongst the nation of Israel, prior to Yahweh Shai, claiming to be somebody and pretty much leading the Israelites to a dead end. You've always had that, cats claiming to be somebody and not knowing what the hell they doing and leading the Israelites, to their demise. All right, the individuals that follow them, okay, when they see the wolf coming, they just abandon the sheep. All right, but the sheep belonging to Yahweh were given to Yahweh Shai. All right, and in particular the elect. And none of the elect can be plucked out of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai's hand. So therefore, none of the elect is going to be found to be following these false Israelite groups in this current day and time. All right, they're not going to be, and even if they are, eventually they'll see the light. Okay, but for the most part, the elect is not going to be following the doctrines that these wayward Israelite groups preach. Okay. Verse 13, it says, the hireling fleeth because he is an hireling and careth not for the sheep. I am the good shepherd and know my sheep and am known of mine. As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Okay, now that's not something that any of the, hirelings were willing to do. Okay, because the sheep, the elect, all right, the nation of Israel as a whole don't belong to the hirelings. All right, but they belong to Yahweh Shai. Everybody on planet Earth came through the loins of Yahweh Shai. And the people also whom the Heavenly Father loves, the apple of his eye, the nation of Israel, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans out there, all right, belonging to Yahweh Shai, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, being that chosen nation, all right, and for the planet to be restored back to its proper state, Yahweh Shai had to be that sacrificial lamb, so he willingly laid down his life. Okay. And another thing I want to point out, being in verse 14, it says, I am the good shepherd and know my sheep and am known of mine. So us being the sheep, when we heard the word, all right, when us brothers in Great Millstone in particular, when we heard the word of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, it was something in our spirit that resonated with it. Okay, it resonated with our spirit, and we were just drawn to the gospel. All right, the gospel of Great Millstone, which is the gospel of Yahweh Shai. We weren't necessarily drawn to the doctrines of these other Israelite groups. All right. Like me, for instance, when I first came in, the first group I encountered was IUIC. All right, and this was on YouTube, and I found out that I was an Israelite and the 12 tribes, and but I wanted more information, more knowledge, but it was limited because you had to buy breakdowns and things of that nature. Okay, and so after a couple weeks of having known that I was an Israelite, having found out that I was an Israelite by way of IUIC, I encountered a Great Millstone video. And the first video, well, actually, it wasn't the first video. It was I encountered the Bishop Elder Sakaran and the bishops and elders of Connecticut. I encountered them first, and it was a total contrast in comparison to what I was learning or hearing from IUIC. IUIC was on some, PC, PC gospel. You know what I'm saying, so to say. But then when I seen the elders and bishops, it was just rough, rugged, and raw. And the real to have you believe that if you are associated with the Bible, you ain't supposed to use any harsh language. All right. I wouldn't say curse words, but I'm gonna say harsh language. All right, so-called swearing, and the bishops of Connecticut was rough and still are rough, rugged, and raw, and deep down inside, it's like yes, it was a relief, it was a joy, but the demon to try to tell you, well, I don't know, but. I was like, you know what? I talk like that. I cuss, so-called cuss. Say so-called foul words or whatnot. And but they know the Bible. So it kind of was like a relief that to know the scriptures. You don't have to be on some Baptist church. Suit and tie, wear uncomfortable ass suit and tie and small ass dress shoes, hurting your feet. You don't got to be in that type of spirit to know the Bible, so it was a relief for me. But, eventually, probably a day later or something like that, I ended up clicking on a video that was, back in the days, YouTube, they would have all the videos lined up on the side. So once you got done with a video, you can choose a video to watch. And so I remember clicking on a video with Apostle Tahar, Apostle Gabar, and I believe Apostle Ramlab and Apostle Rakha. I believe they were all in the video. I might be wrong. But it was a yellow sign with the Lashwan Quadash. And the very first video I see of the apostles and elders, they're breaking down the name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. And that's when I knew that this is where it's at right here. That's exactly when I knew this is it. Because I was like, wow, like this is the name of the Heavenly Father and His Son, and I'm learning how to say it, and I remember just saying it over and over and over and over and over in my head the whole day, man. Just saying the names of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai over and over and over and over and over, just saying them out loud, and for the point of me not, I wanted to remember it. I wanted to know how to pronounce the names of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai correctly. And I wanted it to be seared and ingrained in my mind, So the point being, that long tangent, Verse 14 again, it says, I am the good shepherd, John 10 and 14, and know my sheep and am known of mine. Okay. So as a good shepherd, all right, with the the leaders of Israel being many shepherds underneath Yahushua, King David, you're supposed to be pushing that name as well, pushing those names. And that's not what IUIC does. That's not what Sakari does. That's not what Genesis does. That's not what ISUBK does. Okay, but who does that? Great Millstone. All right. So let me jump to verse 16. I read 15 already. It says, and other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. All right, so this here, Yahushua talking about, the other sheep that pretty much have to be lumped up into the fold, being ultimately the Israelite foreigners. Okay, you had the Israelite foreigners that were in the that part of the world at the time, scattered amongst those nations, over in the east. All right, Asia Minor, Asia Major, that fell away from their heritage. As Jeremiah 17 and 4 says, thou thyself shall discontinue from thine heritage. So those Israelites had to come back to the knowledge of them being of that chosen seed. And then on top of that, the northern kingdom that came here to the Americas. All right, that it tells you about that in the book of Esdras. All right, they themselves, to a certain degree, discontinued from their heritage as well. Even though they be prior to the Spanish, the English, the French, venturing out and conquering the Americas. Prior to that, they spoke certain dialects of Hebrew. Okay, so they got to be lumped up into the fold as well, and that was the whole purpose of Yahushua laying down his life. Okay. Next, let me see. This is John 7 and 31. It says, and many of the people believed on him and said, when the anointed cometh, when Mashiach cometh, will he do more miracles than these which this man had done? All right, so you got to think, Yahushua was doing miracles, performing miracles. All right, performing miracles that had not been seen since the foundation of the earth. All right, a blind man sight restored. People with issues, the woman, the issue of blood, dudes having seizures, all being healed of that. Which really those is all demons, and Yahushua casting those demons out those people and restoring health back to those people. That hadn't been done, man. But still, the wicked scribes and Pharisees and certain Israelites was like, oh well, okay, well, yeah, he did that, but I don't know if he the anointed though. All right, some real deal nigga shit, and that's the mentality that a lot of these Israelite groups have. Okay. Verse 32, it says, the Pharisees heard that the people murmured such things concerning him, and the Pharisees and the chief priests sent officers to take him. Then said Yahushua unto them, yet a little while I am with you, and then I go unto him that sent me. And he was talking about his death. All right, and then his resurrection, and then him ascending back up to be on the right-hand side of the Heavenly Father in the heavens, in the spirit realm. Verse 34 says, ye shall seek me and shall not find me, and where I am, thither you cannot come. Then said the Jews among themselves, whither will he go that we shall not find him? He will go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles. Okay. So let me read this in verse 35. It says, the Israelite leaders were puzzled by verse 35 NLT. It says, I'm going to say Israelite. The Israelite leaders were puzzled by this statement. Where is he planning to go? They asked. Is he thinking of leaving the country and going to the Jews in other lands? Maybe he will even teach the Greeks. All right. So it was well understood that Greek was referring to those Israelites that were in a Greek state of mind. Okay. And what Yahushua did was he commissioned the disciples turned apostles, and ultimately the apostle Paul, all right, to be, apostle Paul to be the main one to take the gospel to the Greeks, aka Israelite foreigners, the Israelites scattered amongst the actual heathen. Okay. Verse 36, it says, what manner of saying is this that he said, ye shall seek me and shall not find me, and where I am, thither you cannot come. All right. So Yahushua, as the scriptures tell you, that he spake nothing unless it had a parable attached to it. He spoke in parables for the purpose of, certain individuals understanding and others not. Okay. All right, John 11:49. I'm going to read through verse 52. And it reads, and one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest, that same year, said unto them, ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us. All right, who's the us? The Israelites. At this time, it was the circumcision. All right, those that knew they were Israelites, that kept the customs. Okay. For us, that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. All right. So Yahushua was building, traction, so to say, with the gospel. Everybody, he had praise and fame. You had certain Israelites that praised him. Even the blind man that received his sight, he worshipped Yahushua. Okay. You had the Pharisees trying to get on him, and repetitively asking him, well, how'd you receive your sight? How'd you receive your sight? And he's like, look, man, I already told you. You asking me again, is you going to believe? Is you going to be a believer now? Okay. So Yahushua was, had some fame. Okay. And so with that, what that was doing was taking a shine away from the Pharisees. All right. And the scribes and the Pharisees, the high priests. All right. Because you gotta understand that, not all, but a lot of those Pharisees and scribes, and they was wicked as hell, man. Okay. They was wicked as hell, sitting up, just like you have these Israelite leaders today. A lot of them. All right. ISUPK, IUIC, they clearly do what they do for money. All right. In particular, I want to talk about Nate. It's clear that, they love that money. All right. Meanwhile, there might be some real issues that members of their congregation is having. Okay. But that's not of any importance for them. All right. Just as long as they continue to get that money, those dollars keep rolling in. So you got to know that with the wicked scribes and Pharisees in whatnot, it was the same way. They wanted Yahweh Shai moved out the way, so that way they can be the focal point, so that the people can kiss their ass. All right. So verse 50 again, it says, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. All right, so the wicked scribes and Pharisees, and the Pharisees and the high priests and whatnot had some knowledge of the scriptures, of prophecy, and knew that the Messiah was going to have to perish and be offered as a sacrifice for the nation of Israel. All right, they knew that. Okay, so that's what Caiaphas, being the high priest, is pretty much prophesying and going into it. Verse 51, it says, and this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Yahweh Shai should die for that nation. Okay, and not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of the Most High that were scattered abroad. So even the high priest, Caiaphas, knew that Yahweh Shai should die for, the Israelites of the circumcision, as well as, the children of the Heavenly Father, the Israelite foreigners, all right, scattered abroad. In verse 52 in the NLT, it says, and not only for that nation, but to bring together and unite all the children of the Most High scattered around the world. So where does the actual heathen, okay, so-called Chinese, so-called Japanese, so-called white men, so-called Arabs, so-called actual Africans, Manute Bol and, the Kimbe Mutombo, all right, Polynesians, where do they fit into this equation? All right, they don't. Okay, they don't. So it's well known that, the anointed, the Messiah was going to be the sacrifice for the whole nation of Israel. Okay. And lastly, let me read Ephesians 2:11, as it says, oneness and peace in Hamashiach over here in the NLT. But in the KJV, it says, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, and this is the Apostle Paul speaking, okay, to the Ephesians, which the Ephesians being Israelites up in Ephesus that believed on the Messiah. They came from those wicked ways and believed on the Messiah. All right. Who were called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands. All right. So let me read that in the NLT. It says, don't forget that you Gentiles used to be outsiders. You were called uncircumcised heathens by the Jews who were proud of their circumcision, even though it affected only their bodies and not their hearts. Because you had a lot of Israelites that were of the circumcision that grew up in the customs of the Israelites. All right, they followed the law, so on and so forth, but their heart wasn't right with the Heavenly Father, because when hope, grace, mercy, in the light of the world entered the world, all right, the world of Israel, the cosmos, that didn't spark that faith and that hope within them. They were still fixated on, the law making them perfect, even though they weren't perfect in the law. Okay. But the Israelite foreigners, the Gentiles, right, actually believed on Yahweh Shai, despite them not being raised in the customs of Israel. All right. Verse 12, KJV, it says that at that time, Ye were without Hamashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without the Most High in the world. But now is Hamashiach Yahushai, but now in Hamashiach Yahushai, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Hamashiach. Okay, so despite y'all being alienated, so to say, the sacrifice of Yahushai is what's gathering you. All right, what brings you near to Yahushai, even nearer than the circumcision that don't believe. Verse 14, it says, "For he is our peace, who hath made both one." All right, the uncircumcision and the circumcision, the Israelite, the Jews that grew up in the customs and the Israelite foreigners. Okay, Jew and Greek. And hath broken down the middle wall of partition between us. So let's look up this word partition. In the Greek, 54:18, and it says fragmos, like a fragment. You know, a fragment is a piece of something. Okay. It says a hedge, a fence, that which separates, prevents two from coming together. All right. So, what comes to mind being, a lot of these soldiers, right? U.S. soldiers that are, the Iraqi war, Afghanistan war, or whatever. But the Iraqi war, you have, IEDs that get, put on roads and whatnot. And, the Humvee will run over that IED and it'll blow the Humvee up. All right. And so with that, with that happening, you got fragments from the IED as well as, the Humvee itself that's just tearing through flesh, tearing through flesh. And I actually know people that have perished, as I know two people, what I'm saying? Two people personally that have went back to the spirit world. And the funny thing is that they're both females, two nigga women that have went back to the spirit world because of getting blown up with an IED. All right. But with that happening, what happens is that those fragments is separating flesh and sinews and bone and all that to where you bleed out, to where it's impossible to patch or restore that separation. Okay, because it's just a million pieces, just flesh everywhere. All right, so spiritually, that's what happened to us as Israelites. Okay, but via Yahushai being a sacrifice, all right, that blood that he shed for us, that's the only thing that's gonna mend, the wounds of us Israelites. All right, being the curses. So verse 14 again, it says, "For he is our peace, who hath made both one, and hath broken down the middle wall partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity." Okay, even the law of commandments and ordinances, commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain one new man, so making peace. All right, in the NLT it says, "He did this by ending the system of law with its commandments and regulations. He made peace between Jews and Gentiles by creating in himself one new people for the two, from the two groups." All right, and once again, the Jews being Israelites and the Gentiles being Israelites. All right, Gentiles being the Israelite foreigners. All right, so it's no longer I'm a Jew and you're a Greek, or I'm a Greek and you're a Jew. No, we're Israelites, the same people, Israelites. Okay. Verse 16, KJV, it says, and that he might reconcile both unto the Most High in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby, and came and preached peace to you which were far off, and to them that were nigh. For through him we both have access by one Spirit unto the Father. Okay. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of the Most High. Okay. So that household of the Most High is Israelites. Okay. Starting with the elect. And that pretty much concludes this lesson. I just wanted to go into that restoration. That restoration is for the nation of Israel. All right. That does not include these other actual nations. All right. They are nowhere in the equation. All right. If anything, they're in the equation as the capacity of a slave. All right. So, Abu Razazah, that was edifying. Till next time, Shalom.